My landlord said the apartment above me had been empty for years. So who kept walking around up there every night? Back in 2021, I rented a tiny apartment in Milwaukee, Wisconsin after moving there for work. The building was old, cheap, and mostly empty. Paint peeled from the walls, the elevators barely worked, and the hallways always smelled damp like wet concrete. Still, it was all I could afford at the time. My apartment sat on the 3rd floor, and according to the landlord, nobody lived directly above me because the 4th floor had been condemned years earlier after severe water damage. At first, everything seemed normal. Then the footsteps started. Every night around 2 a.m., I heard slow pacing directly above my bedroom ceiling, back and forth. Heavy footsteps crossing the floor upstairs. At first, I assumed the landlord lied and someone secretly lived there. But when I asked him about it one afternoon, his expression immediately changed. "There's nobody on the 4th floor," he said quietly. I laughed awkwardly and told him I heard someone walking around every single night. He stared at me for several seconds before replying, "If you hear knocking from above, ignore it." That answer terrified me more than the footsteps themselves. A few nights later, I woke suddenly at exactly 2:13 a.m. 3 loud knocks echoed from directly above my bed. Dust drifted from the ceiling while footsteps moved rapidly overhead, faster than before. Then suddenly, silence. Complete silence. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the security camera facing my front door. Half asleep, I opened the app expecting to see nothing. Instead, a tall man stood outside my apartment door. He wore dark, soaking wet clothes that dripped onto the hallway floor beneath him. His head tilted slightly downward, but even through the grainy camera footage, I could see the smile stretched across his face. He stood completely motionless, watching the camera. Every hair on my body stood up instantly. I slowly walked toward the front door and looked through the peephole. The hallway outside was empty. Nobody there. But when I checked the camera feed again, the man was closer now, standing directly in front of the lens. His pale, smiling face filled the screen completely. Then the feed suddenly glitched into static. The footsteps upstairs started again. Only now, they sounded inside my apartment. Slow footsteps crossing the kitchen floor. I grabbed a knife from beside the sink and stepped carefully into the hallway. The apartment looked empty, dark, silent. Then I noticed water dripping from the ceiling near the bathroom door. A trail of wet footprints stretched across the floor leading toward the bathroom. Large footprints, bare feet, like someone had walked through deep water moments earlier. The bathroom door stood slightly open, and from inside, I heard breathing. Slow, wet breathing. I pushed the door open carefully. The bathroom was empty, but written across the fogged mirror were the words, "He let me in." My stomach dropped instantly. Then the lights shut off. Complete darkness swallowed the apartment, and directly above me, someone started running across the ceiling. Fast. Heavy footsteps shaking the walls while distant laughing echoed overhead. I ran for the front door, but the moment I opened it, I froze. The hallway outside was flooded ankle-deep with dark water, and standing near the stairwell was the smiling man, motionless, watching me. Water slowly dripped from his clothes onto the floor. Then he whispered softly, "You heard me upstairs." The hallway lights flickered once. Suddenly he stood much closer, only a few feet away now. I slammed the apartment door shut and locked myself inside the bedroom while calling police with shaking hands. The footsteps continued all night, above me, inside the walls, sometimes directly outside the bedroom door. Police arrived nearly 20 minutes later. When they searched the building, they found no one. In fact, according to the officers, there wasn't even a fourth floor anymore. The staircase leading upward had been demolished years earlier after a massive flood caused the entire level to collapse. Several tenants drowned that night before rescue crews arrived. One officer pulled me aside quietly before leaving. "Did you see a man smiling?" I nodded slowly. His face immediately went pale. Then he whispered, "People here always see him before they move out." After that night, I barely slept anymore. Every evening around 2:13 a.m., the footsteps returned above my ceiling. 3 knocks always followed. Then came whispering inside the walls. Sometimes I heard crying upstairs, sometimes laughter, and sometimes splashing water. One morning I noticed dark water leaking slowly through my bedroom ceiling onto the carpet beside my bed. Maintenance finally cut open part of the ceiling to investigate. Inside was a narrow, flooded crawl space hidden between floors, and floating in the water were dozens of old photographs, pictures of former tenants. Every photo showed the same thing: a tall, pale man smiling somewhere in the background, closer in every picture, watching. Then I found one photograph of myself asleep in bed, taken recently, and standing beside my bed was the smiling man. I packed my belongings immediately and decided to leave that same day. While loading boxes into my car, the landlord finally admitted the truth. During the flood years earlier, one tenant became trapped upstairs as water filled the 4th floor. Rescue workers heard him screaming and pounding on walls for hours, but they never recovered his body after the collapse. The landlord looked exhausted while speaking. After the flood, he whispered, people started hearing footsteps overhead. Then they started seeing him. I asked why the building was still open if people kept experiencing this. The landlord stared silently at the flooded basement door before answering, "Because nobody believes them." I moved into a new apartment across the state a few days later. For a while, things felt normal again. No footsteps, no whispers, no flooded hallways. Then 2 months later, I woke suddenly at exactly 2:13 a.m. 3 loud knocks echoed directly above my ceiling. My blood ran cold instantly. A few seconds later, water began dripping slowly onto my bedroom floor. Then came footsteps overhead. Slow footsteps moving across the ceiling above me. And from somewhere inside the apartment, a wet voice whispered softly, "You moved upstairs too."